Tommy Boyd.
Yeah, now look, I'm supposed to be... Just let me speak to the listener. Good afternoon and welcome to the show. We're about to discuss... Where are we? Oh, I've just got a note saying, oh, that's great. Thanks very much indeed. My world is collapsing. First of all, are you still there, pal, on the line? We better put this bloke on air. Can you do that? I'll go through into the main studio. I got caught. Sorry, listener. Thank you very much. I'm back where I should be, in my own compartment. You try and organise a tight, crisp show, and what happens? First of all, you get speaking to some guy who's... you're on the radio now. What's your name, anyway? What's your name, anyway?
Michael.
Turn the radio off, Michael.
Yeah,
We're having an argument there. I was trying to organise the next hour of the programme, and you wouldn't let it lie, would you, about Malcolm?
No, I wouldn't let it lie, because I thought it was a bit out of order.
Well, it wasn't out of order at all. We're exploring the human psyche on this programme.
No, that's not fair. You're saying that all Malcolms are tosspots, and that's what you said about Malcolm Skillner, and then you just told me on the phone that you were doing it to wind him up.
Well,
That's not fair.
I was trying to let him promote himself from being a Malcolm to being something more magnificent. I was deliberately trying... What? Like a Michael?
Well,
for example.
Michael's magnificent.
Exactly, compared to Malcolm.
Why is it?
I don't know, but it is.
Explain that to me.
I can't. That's what we're exploring in a programme like this. This is why this is your unique...
But you've got a one-sided view.
No, I haven't. I haven't got any views at all.
You just said all Malcolms are tosspots.
That's what the listeners tell me.
You're saying all Malcolms are anoraks. They all go out with a metal detector and collecting the stamps and all this. When they don't. There's about probably 1% of Malcolms that do that.
This is what the listeners report. This is what we found in this hour of the programme, that Malcolms seem to be anoraks.
In the end, basically, the percentage is that all Malcolms are not tosspots.
The majority.
So in other words, the discussion is over.
The discussion is not over.
Right. All the people that have been on that are Malcolms, even that lady earlier who said that she's married to a Malcolm, and he's fantastic. He does everything.
Well, she would say that, wouldn't she?
So we have just proven... Well, no, she said that he plays the drums. He does a lot of things, not just because he's her husband, but we basically said that 90% of Malcolms are good people. They do a lot of things for the country.
They're anoraks.
They're not anoraks.
They are
That's your one-sided view. We've just proven it on your radio station.
All men who play the drums are anoraks. Think about it. You think about it.
No, they're not.
Well, look at the Beatles.
I know a lot of Malcolms, believe me, and one of them...
All right, who's the most Malcolmish Rolling Stone? Exactly. Who's the most Malcolmish Beatle? He's gone. I'm sorry, it seemed worth... Oh, and the football club have rung me to say that my tickets... I've given the wrong credit number for my tickets for the big match on Saturday, so let's get back on the beaten track, shall we? I'll share it with you because, well, when you come on the radio and it's your turn, you'll share your life with the listener. Free call 0500 10 53 89. As we move on to a global agenda, time is running out for you to mark your cross against the vote for the man of the century. Voting has been happening for months. Winston Churchill is in the lead. Many people in Britain will be pleased to know, and many people in Britain will support his candidature. But the Americans have come rather late to join battle. And if you take the American magazines, if you read American newspapers, you will know that a concerted campaign is underway to promote an American citizen, an American man, as man of the century. And setting aside national allegiance, I have to say, and I hope you join me in agreeing with this, that their selection is the man that we should be voting for if we cherish the security and the peace and harmony which we at the moment enjoy right around the world. And their choice is Ronald Reagan for man of the century. And let's say amen to that. Let's wallow in the economic stability and the prosperity that planet Earth has been enjoying for some 3, 4, 5 years since the legacy of the Reagan administration began to bear fruit. Unemployment globally is down. Steady growth is happening, particularly where it matters, i.e. here and in the United States and in Europe. Inflation is low and inflation is steady. Inflation has been conquered. It's been controlled by the rigid and the powerful and the austere economic policies of the man of the century, Ronald Reagan. Interest rates are competitive. They are steady. They're going to stay like that thanks to his economic policies. He produced a country which could afford to play its superstars, like that basketball player Dennis Rodber, a reasonable £17 million per year. That's how right they've got it. When America it sneezes, we catch a cold, right? But when America is fit and well and healthy, all right, we can bask in its glow. So let's support the man who has this country glowing more than any other, and that is Ronald Reagan. We're enjoying unprecedented global security. Why? Thanks to Ronald Reagan's successful stance against the Soviet bloc. The Cold War is over. We like to think we won it. We didn't win it. The United States won it. The United States didn't win it. Ronald Reagan won it. He did. He did. This is unfashionable in this country. It used to be unfashionable in America to say this, but now it is fashionable in America and soon will be fashionable here. His place on Mount Rushmore is booked. Ronald Reagan is, rightly, the man of the century. Saddam is cuffed. Taiwan and Korea is being monitored. The United States is running planet Earth, thanks to Reagan's 8 years. The feel-good factor is here. The feel-good factor was there when Reagan was in the White House. It was Camelot as never before. This is the man who survived an assassination attempt, which at least 3 presidents didn't manage to do. He did. He survived one and was quipping all the way on the trolley into the operating theatre. What a guy. What a guy! The great communicator who was prepared to joke to camera. World security is guaranteed. We begin bombing the Russians in 2 minutes. I mean, it was a joke. It was a good joke. It was a cracker for a president to issue. Ronald Reagan, man of the century. What a life! From being voted the man with the most perfect American male physique, through to a great career in movies, through to being the most powerful man on earth, through to being, surely, don't you agree, the man of the century. Free call 0500 10 53 89. Even his scandals were wholesome compared to the guy that we've got now. Yeah, the way he flirted with Maggie was magnificent compared to the chap we've got now flirting with our Tony. Free call 0500 10 53 89. Even the noble way in which he dealt with the illness, which means that Ronald Reagan, even if he lives through to the turn of the century, will not know, even though he is alive, that he is the man of the century. He's quite a guy. A heck of a guy. Of course, Churchill will have his followers, but there will be those who think that it was the British people who led Churchill against Hitler rather than the other way round. Gandhi will have his supporters. The French will put forward, no doubt, Charles de Gaulle. And the Russians will say that Gorbachev made just as big a contribution to world peace as Ronald Reagan. There's Albert Schweitzer, everyone through and down to Ali Bongo, but nobody comes up to the shoulders of Ronald Reagan. America's choice, your choice, for man of the century. I'm Tommy Boyd. This is Talk Radio. There's a... Mark calls from Oxford. You're on Talk Radio. Mark, good afternoon.
I was a bit young at the time during when Ronald Reagan was in, but I remember sitting up in bed when I was sort of 7 years old and being afraid by the Cold War. But I wanted to say that because he was a former actor, I think that I don't necessarily know too much about his politics, but I felt that he was a good judge of character. And certainly in terms of his negotiations with Gorbachev, he certainly held an extra sort of je ne sais quoi. I remember one story at the time about he was having meetings in the White House with Gorbachev, and they were at a bit of a stalemate over arrangements, over sort of disarmament and so on. And Ronald Reagan thought for a second, and he said, why don't we go for a walk? And sort of Gorbachev said, I'm sorry. And Ronald Reagan said, come on, let's go for a walk. And so they got up from the sort of closed-in office that they were in, and they went for a walk around the garden. And apparently that sort of changed that sort of moved the conversation on and sort of broke the stalemate a bit.
Yes.
The fact that they got onto their feet and they, he realised that if they sort of opened each other, sort of got up and breathed some fresh air and had a walk like two friends, and it sort of broke the deadlock. And apparently they certainly signed some papers that afternoon.
When he met Gorbachev and they stayed at the Aga Khan's place, there's a good story going around America at the moment about this. The Aga Khan said, yes, you can use my palace for the summit, but could you take particular care of my goldfish? Okay, he did, right? Anyway, on the Monday of the summit, Reagan was down and pressed, waiting for Gorbachev to arrive, when he noticed that one of the goldfish was dead. Okay?
Right.
So what he did was, before he met Gorbachev to sort out world peace, he gave one of his aides a $5 and sent him out to buy a goldfish that looked sufficiently like the dead one so that the Aga Khan wouldn't be cross that he'd lent Reagan and Gorbachev his place. And I've just got to say, that I think he sounds like a wonderful guy.
He does. He's very human.
Guy. Yeah.
You almost think that, when he was a little bit sort of with it, that you could have gone out for a beer with him.
Yeah. When he beat Jimmy Carter to become president of the United States, they had one of those head-to-head debates. And Reagan and Carter were at their lecterns, and there was some host in the middle, right? And Carter kept saying, what he was going to do and how he was going to turn America around. And every time he said something, Reagan just gripped hold of the lectern and looked at him with this sort of paternal sort of, oh, there you go, silly boy. And he would say to him, there you go again. And the American public loved it.
Yes.
And if you've got the American public eating out of the palm of your hand, you've got to be a pretty bright cookie.
Certainly. It's just, but also, he's a part of my youth, and I just remember growing up and sort of putting my faith in him when I was little, and sort of thinking, I'm sure him and Maggie will sort something out.
Well, when you finally get to go to the United States, make sure that Mount Rushmore is on your itinerary, because by the time you get there, they'll have his face carved in granite.
I hope so.
I'm sure. Mark, thanks for your call. Mike calls from Surrey. You're on Talk Radio. Mike, good afternoon.
Hello, Tommy.
Mike.
I'd just like to nominate someone else, actually.
Yes.
Done more for world peace and race relations and everything like that. It's basically Malcolm X.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks. Kim calls from Bolton. You're on Talk Radio. Kim, good afternoon.
Hi, Tommy. Why does it have to be a man of the century? Why can't it be a woman?
Oh, there is a woman section.
There is?
Yeah, of course, yes.
Well, can we change the man bit? It should be a person.
No.
No, why not?
Because then women wouldn't get a look in.
What do you mean women won't get a look in?
Well,
we've had the greatest women going in the last past century.
Who?
Princess Di, Mother Teresa, Margaret Thatcher, Indira Gandhi. Do I carry on?
Well, it's not really a terribly substantial list up against the likes of Churchill and Reagan, is it?
Oh, come off it. They're an awful lot better.
Who?
Oh, take Princess Di. She changed the world views on HIV.
No, come on, we're not yet. Maybe, but Ronald Reagan has given us the most stable, peaceful planet Earth imaginable.
Yeah, and Princess Di and Mother Teresa have given us a very stable spiritual development.
Whatever Mother Teresa achieved, and she's had her detractors, it's no more or less than what Albert Schweitzer's achieved. So why do you say?
I disagree with that.
Well, what? Well, you better quantify then.
Well, you're talking about men that have gone into power, that are being paid to do a job.
Yes.
They're not doing it because they want to, or because they have to, or it's because it's a calling. Now,
well, look, if you're going to make an argument out of this, I can assure you that Diana's legacy is greater than Ronald Reagan's in financial terms.
Oh, I agree, but she didn't have to go and shake the hands of a person who's got AIDS. She didn't have to fight for land mining, but she did do. She didn't actually somebody didn't say to her, this is a job and you have to do it. She actually chose to do it.
Ronald Reagan didn't have to achieve economic and military stability for planet Earth.
Of course he did. If he wanted to keep his job, he had to.
Right, I see, just like absolutely everybody else. The point is, he did it. He did it. He achieved it. And you don't like him because he's a bloke.
Exactly.
Yeah, I know. It stands out a mile.
There is nothing wrong with changing the wording from man of the century or woman of the century to person of the century.
Well,
That's like being in the Middle Ages.
That's not how it is. There is a man of the century poll and a woman of the century poll. What do you want me to do about that?
Well, how about changing it? How about you saying to your listeners, let's have a person of the century?
No, it's boring.
Yeah, that's because we can't argue. You want us to argue.
No, I want harmony. Harmony is much more interesting on the radio.
Well, harmony is having
agrees.
the middle bit, which is person of the century.
No, it wouldn't work. Look, the simple fact of the matter is, Kim, it is a fact. If you drop a list of 100 people who you could vote for as person of the century, unfortunately, it's very unlikely that a woman would win it.
Yeah, that's probably because it's men that actually choose who's going to win it.
No, I don't suppose that's true.
How do you know? Have you actually checked into it?
No.
So I think you should get your researchers into it and check who it is that chooses.
Oh, for goodness sake, some people, honestly, it's a hobby horse call, this, isn't it? If you think that my researchers have got nothing better to do than to ring organisations and say, how many women have you got working for you and did they have any input in the way this competition was drawn up, you have got another thing coming.
Oh, that's because you don't want to know the answer.
No,
you don't want to know that it has already been decided that a man is going to win it.
It's not that I don't want to know the answer. I don't think I'd be interested in the answer. I trust the people who draw up something like this. You don't.
So are you telling me that you trust the people that draw up something like this that will choose a man over a woman just because he's a man?
If a competition is the man of the century, I do trust them, generally speaking, to choose a man, yes. I'm not
Well, I
quite
agree,
clear.
but then I think we should trust them also to have the right wording and put person of the century.
Well, again, no, I don't, for the reasons that I've explained, and you've just said that 3 times. Can't you keep the conversation moving a bit?
I think we should agree to disagree on this, and I think there's a lot of other women out there that would agree with me, and we should have had person of the century.
Well, Ronald Reagan then is person of the century, agreed?
No, I disagree with that. I
who is
personally think
then?
it should be Princess Di.
Well, look. Let's be fair about this. You're choosing Princess Di because she's a woman.
No, I'm choosing Princess Di because I think she's done the most in this century.
Well, I know this is terribly unfashionable to say it, pal, but quite frankly, she couldn't shine Ronald Reagan's shoes.
I tend to disagree with that. I think she did more for this country than Ronald Reagan ever did.
It's not to do with this...
More for this world than Ronald Reagan ever did.
Thank you, and that simply is not true. It's not quantifiable. You can't even begin to quantify what she did.
Well, the same goes for Ronald Reagan.
No, you can quantify precisely what he did through his economic policies and through his foreign policies.
And what about what Princess Di did for the sort of the fashion industry in England and all over the world?
Honestly, you are a disgrace. Honestly, this is awful. I can't believe I'm having a conversation with somebody who says that Princess Di's contribution to the century was greater than Ronald Reagan's because what she did for the fashion industry.
Not just the fashion industry, it's for everything else. Come on, what did she do for land mining?
You tell me.
Changed.
Quantify it.
How can you quantify life? You cannot quantify life.
No, but you come on the radio and you say she did a great deal. I am prepared to tell you what I think Ronald Reagan did for the...
Well, I disagree with you, Tommy.
No.
I wholeheartedly disagree with you.
I know that, but I'm asking you to lay out your argument. Let's just lay out your argument, girl.
Well, I can't see how you can quantify what she did to change people's viewpoints on land mining.
You can try, because it's your flipping argument.
No, you cannot. I mean, she actually...
Then you've got no argument, dear. You've got no argument. You have no argument. An argument consists of a premise which can be qualified by offering evidence.
Well, what evidence do you want? I mean, the woman got the whole world to look at the land mining situation and actually think about it and to get landmines out of countries to try and stop the use of land mining. And by doing so, she has saved an awful lot of lives.
Okay. Now you're quantifying. That's good. This is
a
all
lot better
working.
than what Ronald Reagan did.
Okay, now you're doing it. Now you're having an argument now. That's good.
Right. Now, Tommy, I think that the person of the century should be Princess Di.
Okay.
Let's take it from there.
Okay, now you've got an argument.
Right.
It's rubbish, but you've got an argument. Thank you.
Okay.
It didn't take too long, did it?
No.
That's how you argue, by the way. It's not difficult. You've got your case and you've got your evidence.
Right, do you want me to carry on with everything else she did?
No.
No, right. Okay, bye.
But thank you for your call. Free call 0500 1053 89. In praise of the man of the century, surely it is Ronald Reagan. I'm Tommy Boyd. This is Talk Radio. number is free call 0500 10 53 89. The Americans are actively promoting Ronald Reagan in an international vote, a global vote, which is taking place now and will run through until the middle of next year. They're looking for the man of the century. Winston Churchill, we are told, is one of the leaders in the poll at the moment. The Americans toyed with JFK, of course, but have settled on Ronald Reagan. And he's getting a makeover right now in all corners of the American press. And why not? He may just turn out to be not just the greatest president America ever had, but genuinely the man of the millennium. Sean calls from Berkshire. You're on Talk Radio, Sean.
Hi, Tommy.
Good afternoon.
Millennium. Listen, Ronald Reagan. Ronald is the American equivalent of Malcolm. Did you not know this? I'm surprised at you. He is a muppet. He is the lamb to the slaughter. How has he made the world stable, Tommy?
Well, because the Cold War's over.
What Cold War? He hasn't even made his own backyard stable.
The Cold War is over.
Is it?
Yeah, the Berlin Wall came down.
Still, the next that's the end of Act 1, mate. He hasn't even got his backyard stable. In another 20 or 30 years' time, there'll be Catholic America, there'll be Black America, there'll be Latin America, there'll be Jewish America. It'll be divided up in about 4 or 5 different countries.
Well, maybe or maybe not. That's a very negative viewpoint, but you don't know. Yeah, it sounds like that's what you hope. I don't know why.
No, it's what's going to happen, but it's what I fear. But in a way, it could be what I hope. You could be right there, because it would bring it all to the end quicker.
Look, baloney, we can all pretend we've got a crystal ball, but it doesn't amount to a row of beans, because you don't even know what's going to win the 4 o'clock this afternoon.
I don't. It's true. I don't follow race.
But I can tell you what won the 3 o'clock right now, because it's 3:30. Now, what I'm here to tell you is that Ronald Reagan's achievements as President of the United States eclipse every single other president they've ever had.
His personal achievements are absolute nil, because the only probably good thing about him is that he knows when to bow down to superior forces, such as his advisors and his Masonic, left and right-handed men.
This is claptrap, pal.
Tommy, he doesn't know a thing. Reagan doesn't know a thing. All he knew was how to follow advice from people which he knew were better men than he was.
Yeah, again, I mean, this is claptrap.
He's a puppet.
Yeah, but again, this is spitting image type
puppet
analysis. This is spitting image type analysis. This is feeble. This is weak. This is childlike.
Do you think he came to those conclusions himself? Do you think he arrived at Reaganomics?
I'll tell you what, man. He's had the most fantastic life of any man in the 20th century.
Yeah, I think he has. You're right there. He's had a good life. But man of the century,
He's had a fantastic
puppet of the century.
He's had a fantastic... Listen, you're not clever enough to try and tell us, okay, how the White House machine functions, are you?
I most certainly am.
Do it.
He's a puppet.
Do it. Break it down.
Okay, I'll do it for you then. Okay, I'll do it for you. Listening?
I want fact. I don't want fiction.
I'm giving you fact, not opinion, because why should you respect my opinion? But you can listen to the fact.
Yeah, I don't want fantasy stuff.
Reagan was a good-looking man. He had a suntan. He had an athletic figure. He had boot polish in his hair, which is a pretty good requirement, because he always had boot polish in his hair as well. So. That's like going on the same direction.
You misunderstand. I was asking you to explain this idea that Reagan was a puppet. I'm asking you to explain exactly the mechanics of the decision-making process in the White House, then, so that you can illustrate your view that he was led rather than did the leading.
First thing they would need is a reasonably good-looking person with a reasonably athletic figure to front everything. That's the first thing they would need.
This is shallow
Second
stuff.
thing they would need is some very intelligent people behind the scenes who could be as ugly as hell, but that doesn't matter because they're behind the scenes.
Yeah, you're guessing, aren't you?
No, it's obvious. It's just blatant.
No, it's obvious, but it's a guess.
It's a good guess.
Well, you would say that, wouldn't you? But you don't know what's going to win the 4 o'clock, but I know what won the 3 o'clock, and I'm here to tell you that Reagan will go down in history as the greatest president of the United States.
Of course he will.
Thank you.
But only because he's a
Didn't
puppet.
take long, did it?
Only because he's a puppet.
Only because he's a puppet.
Yes, he's a puppet. He was good at following advice, and I would give him that. He was a very good follower.
Who gave the advice?
He was a good lamb.
Who gave the advice?
Well, his advisors, obviously.
Who were they? Name one.
Well, name one. I mean,
Name one.
These are PR men. They're not, they're not in the public eye.
Name one. You know nothing.
Well, I know he has advisors, and what their names are is not relevant.
No, name one.
Well, their names aren't relevant, Tommy. The point is...
You can't even name one. You don't even
machinery. No, the machinery which is there behind Reagan.
Who was Reagan's vice president?
Who was vice president?
Who was Secretary of State?
What, to Reagan?
Who was the leader of the Senate under Reagan?
I don't know, but...
No, you don't know anything, do you?
Quiz, or are we talking about Puppet of the Year?
You're just trying to get a few facts into the conversation. You ain't got none, have you?
I thought we were talking about Puppet of the Year.
You got none?
I thought we were talking about Puppet of the Year.
And there's nothing wrong with puppets, by the way.
Sorry?
Nothing wrong with puppets whilst we're on the subject.
Well, he was, as a puppet, he was very good. I give him that. I told you that already. He was a good puppet.
Free call 0500 10 53 89. Ronald Reagan, man of the century, president of the century, man of the millennium. We live on a peaceful planet. We live on a stable planet. Boil it right down until there's hardly anything left in the saucepan, and you're left with the simple fact that Ronald Reagan made a bigger contribution to that glorious fact than anybody else. Man or woman. Man or woman. Man and woman. Emma calls from Droitwich. You're on Talk Radio, Emma. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Yes, you said that we live in a peaceful world. There's still racism about. There's still sexism about. Martin Luther King, no, he's a man I really do admire because he's the first person to start the civil rights movements off, and they're not being treated like slaves anymore.
Thanks for the nomination, Emma. Free call 0500 10 53 89. Paul's on the line from Portsmouth. You're on Talk Radio, Paul.
Tom.
Paul.
Would that lady have nominated Princess Di if she hadn't tragically died earlier in the year? You know, would she sort of nominated someone else?
Yes, your question I'll allow to be rhetorical, but...
oh, no, it's slightly controversial, but, you know...
Well, a rhetorical question contains its own answer.
Yeah. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. But, you know, question asked, question answered, Paul. Thank you.
Yeah, cheers, Tom.
Yeah. Yeah, free call 0500 10 53. You know, I know the water's hot, but, the toe can go in. Vic calls from Surrey. You're on Talk Radio, Vic. Good afternoon.
Hello, Tommy.
Ronald Reagan's place in history.
Yes, I agree with you, I think. I think one of the best things about Reagan was his humour and his wit. I remember once he made me laugh when he was being interviewed. I can't remember who it was by. They're talking about his economic policies. And the interviewer said, well, in a very serious way, when did you realise, because at first his policies looked like they were going wrong, that your policies were succeeding? Quick as a flash, he came back, when they stopped calling them Reaganomics.
Yes.
So, you know, he could sort of see where people were coming from. That sort of...
Yes. Oh, yes. It was struck me as being a pretty decent guy. Good actor, too.
Yes, he was.
I think he gets a lot of flack for his films, but he was very good in Hellcats of the Pacific.
I've never saw that. I mean, I've read his biography because he's mentioned about his King's Row and all this sort of thing.
Did you see him in Bonzo Goes to Hollywood?
No, I didn't.
Or was it Bozo?
Something like that, wasn't it? With the monkey, wasn't there, with him? So.
A very good light comedian.
Yeah.
And
I think there was more depth to him than people think.
Oh, yeah.
I think he put his drama to good use. I remember when there's always fuss about Gorbachev, this Gorby mania, and he more or less, I think it was at Berlin, the wall, and he more or less said, if you believe in freedom how you say you are, then Mr. Gorbachev, come down here, open that gate, pull down that wall.
Yes.
And about a year later, it was pulled down.
It was, wasn't it?
And I think he never really got the credit for that.
I think when we pull back, when we helicopter away from the 20th century, we will look back and we will pick out some bright points. And the Camelot that was the White House when he was there was a burning star, wasn't it?
It was.
Absolutely.
Yeah, a white city on a hill. He used to come out. He had this sort of this corn way, this almost Huey Green way, but I think it was done deliberately with a purpose. This sort of.
And he used to wind people up as well, didn't he? Because he wound up Maggie last time he was over in this country as President of the United States, because he asked her 3 times if his coffee that he'd been served was decaffeinated. And, it was just to annoy her. And he did. Did you see her last night on Pleasure Beach?
Sorry?
Did you watch telly last night?
No, I didn't.
Oh, Maggie was on Pleasure Beach.
Ah.
Still doing what she does.
What, was that lecturing or...?
Sort of, yes. Lecturing a man dressed as Frontier Fred. It was funny. It was funny without realising it was funny. Free call 0500 10 53 89. Thank you, Vic, in Surrey. Angus calls now from Kidderminster.
Good afternoon, Tommy.
Welcome to Talk Radio.
I wonder if some of your listeners know who Winston Churchill was, to be honest. That's one point I wanted to make. The second point, you were on about the Cold War and how Reagan finished it. Now, I read or I watched a television programme about the negotiations at one point, and he was negotiating the final negotiation he had with Gorbachev. They were sort of up against a bit of a brick wall, as I remember, and I can't remember the exact details, but it was something like this. Gorbachev was saying, look, we won't cut a number of weapons if you cut them. And then Ronald Reagan, out of the blue, he said, why don't we get rid of all weapons? I'd like to see a world without weapons altogether.
Nice one.
And they moved along that path from that, and Gorbachev was saying, well, we'll have this many weapons if you have it.
Yeah.
And then Reagan said, I'd like to get rid of all of them. Why don't we get rid of all of them? And they moved the whole negotiation position forward on that basis. And that was the end of the Cold War when they did that.
What a guy.
Which was a fantastic achievement, and he did that on his own back. He wasn't his advisors, he wasn't geared up to do it, it was something he just thought of on the spur of the moment. I think one of your callers rang up and said they went for a walk, and it just came to him like that.
Yeah.
Now, the next point is probably the greatest leader, certainly, well, you know, you've got a toss-up really for the two men of the century, really, and Ronald Reagan's one of them, but Winston Churchill, because Winston Churchill was against public opinion. When he decided to take the Germans on, the British people didn't want a war with Germany. They were all, you know, looking forward to peace in our time and all this sort of thing. And he came along before the event, and he said, we're going to have to fight these people. We're going to have to take these on, and we're going to lose much life, blood, sweat and tears and all that.
No,
nobody was with him.
Angus, this is all chronologically muddled up. It's all in the wrong order. It didn't happen quite like that at all. The blood, sweat and tears speech came long after he had gone to number 10.
Right, yes, but I'm saying that war was declared when he came into power. But...
Yes.
Nobody wanted a war. And he was the only one prior to the war that was telling the truth about Germany and about Hitler. And he had to get into office, and he had to get the people behind him to fight the war. When he came into power, people didn't want a war.
I think people realised, Angus, that they didn't really have much chance. They were in a war. And when you're in a war, you've only got one option, and that's to try and win it.
Yeah, but, the point is, though, Tommy, the people you've got to get the will of the people to fight a war like that.
You don't have any difficulty getting the will of the British people to fight a war.
I think you're wrong, because, looking back at the things that happened, his speeches instilled the feeling of pride and people, and what was right and what was wrong.
You don't have to be proud to fight. What you do is when the bloke says charge, you charge. Otherwise, you get shot by your own side. You don't need a raspy old bloke on the radio to make you want to fight.
A bit more to it than that, Tommy. Because you've got to set up a munitions industry. You've got to change. Everything. What people don't realise is all industry in Britain was requisitioned for war effort. It changed from being. You're trying to say that people want to fight a war when they've all got prosperous businesses making motor cars and different things like that. When the war came along, all that stopped. Everybody was fighting for the war effort. There was no other industry. That was all it was. UK War Limited. Everything changed.
Mm. And what was the alternative?
What was the alternative?
Yeah.
Well, they could have. There was a move at the time. They could sue for, sue. Is that the right word? They could go for peace with Hitler, and they need not have had the war at all. They could have had a pact or something like that.
Well, no, it wasn't a genuine alternative. But what was the alternative once you decided to go to war? To do what you did?
No, but you're looking in retrospect now. You're looking with past history on your side.
I'm not with you.
The point that I'm making is, at that time, people didn't want a war. And he had to get the will of the people behind him.
Excuse me, Angus, that's absolute baloney.
It's not.
That's astonishing.
They had the First World War.
How old are you?
No guts. No, the British people, we got no will to go and fight. We'd run down the whole of the Royal Air Force.
What a pile of
It's not. It's true. This is what it was. And he got into power, and he started building up the Air Force and just biding his time.
Let me tell you who the hero of the Second World War was. Let me tell you who won the Second World War. Let me tell you who defeated Hitler. Let me tell you who gave peace to planet
Well, I know who did, but
let me tell you who achieved the freedom that you and I enjoy this afternoon, and anybody else who calls this programme and any other programme.
Spill the beans.
Yeah, I will. It wasn't Winston Churchill. All right? It wasn't Winston Churchill. It was every single man, Jack, woman and child who fought and lived or fought and died here and across the world, who actually did the job. And they won what was won, no more, but no less. No less.
I won't argue with that, Tommy. In fact, I agree with you.
Than winning.
But what you had to have at that time
However,
was a leader who would bite the bullet.
Yeah. You've said all that, and that's the cliche. And history, as the man said, is a distillation of rumour. And the rumour at the time was that Winston Churchill would have gone running out down Downing Street with a submachine gun himself, shooting at Germans if they'd ever bothered to come up the Mall. That was how it was put forward. I don't know whether that was for his benefit or for the nation's benefit.
Well, I've never heard that said before, actually, until you said it. I think you're just twisting things that have been said and sort of altering facts a little bit to suit your argument.
No, I'm not. I'm trying to look things at a fresh perspective, Angus, and there's never anything wrong with that.
But I'm looking at a historical perspective.
Yeah, you've got the bog standard view, I know.
No, things that happened at that time. It's not a bog standard view. It is actually history that happened at that time.
Well, I've only ever read Churchill's History of the Second World War, and his doctor's memoirs, and the rise and fall of the Third Reich. So maybe you know more than I do.
Well, I'm not telling you where I get my information from.
Aha!
But there you are.
Classified, is it? or was it some programme you saw on Channel 4?
Some programme I saw on Channel 4. You're just trying to browbeat me, I think, really.
Well, I don't know if I'm trying.
Yeah. You're succeeding.
Thank you. Free call 0500 10 53 89. We're discussing the man of the century, the man of the millennium, perhaps. President, for he always will be President, Ronald Reagan. I'm Tommy Boyd. This is Talk Radio. There's a good argument for listening. Andrew calls from London. You're on Talk Radio, Andrew. Good afternoon.
Hello, Tommy.
Andrew.
Yes, I would say that Nelson Mandela should be the man of the century, and all the people that died and fought in the Second World War, and all the people that died and fought in the apartheid movement in South Africa. And also I believe that what he has done so far this century has been the most beautiful thing, forgiving. You see, that was one of his greatest characters, really. And the case of Reagan, I'm sorry, Reagan, his legacy is going to tear America apart in the next century. What he left in the 80s, he made the rich and the poor to be far apart. He made the groups of hyphenated Americans to be far apart. He's not that intelligent, because I lived in the third world where he was in power. And any child that is growing up in the third world could see the president of the United States, how they're doing, because they are streetwise. They know that this person hasn't got a good heart. You understand me? Roosevelt would have been the president we could call the person of the century if it's from the American side. That's apart from Mandela. You understand me? But for Reagan, I mean, anybody who is saying that he should be, I think they should actually go and check on some of the records about him. Really, he's not that intelligent, really. I'm even surprised people are mentioning his name, really.
Andrew, thanks for your call. Costas is on the line now from Berkshire. Costas?
Hello, Tommy. I'm just thinking about a woman that phoned about 20 minutes ago with regard to Princess Diana.
I know.
I was just ringing up a bit perturbed by there always has to be a feminist angle to all the conversations. If it's a man of the century, why can't we just stick to that? Yeah. It's bad enough being a normal heterosexual male in this unequal society.
Yeah.
And, you know, the Princess Diana, if her marriage had gone the right way, I don't think she would have been seeking the publicity she was seeking.
Okay.
I mean, I agree. Ronald Reagan did a lot for this world, for this century, but she was mentioning Maggie Thatcher. We can go into a long conversation about Maggie Thatcher, but I wouldn't put her in the same line as Ronald Reagan or Nelson Mandela.
No. You have to have a man of the century and a woman of the century competitions, and they've got to be separate in the same way that at Wimbledon you have a men's singles champion, a women's singles champion, for the same reason.
But men are losing the enclaves. We're being pushed into a corner. I agree with equality, Tommy. That's all I think we should have equality. I don't see why the men should live in a suppressive society, which is what it sounds like that woman wants, the woman that phoned 20 minutes ago.
I mean, if Ronald Reagan had been born a woman, he'd still have done what he did, wouldn't he?
Yeah, exactly.
He would have done if he'd been Renata Reagan.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just probably speaking for a lot of men in this country that feel that the man of the century should be a man, as you quite rightly pointed out to her.
Yes.
Yeah.
Costas, thank you for your call. Free call 0500 10 53 89. Ronald Reagan, man of the century. It will happen. I'm Tommy Boyd. This is Talk Radio. The mullah couldn't dance. What are you talking about? Free call 0500 10 53 89. John calls from Surrey. John, Ronald Reagan, man of the century.
Well, I think he must be up there with the best of them, because I think he probably destroyed communism.
I think history will end up judging it like that. You're right. Yes.
I think, most of the people in Eastern Europe would probably agree with that, because they're free now and they weren't before.
Agreed.
So that's, what I think of him, really.
John, stay with us. Let me bring Ian into the conversation. Ian, you're on Talk Radio.
Hiya,
Good afternoon.
John.
Hi.
Hiya, John. I couldn't disagree with him more. I think Ronald Reagan, he ended Cold War and he ended communism. That's America's enemy. I don't think people in Eastern Europe, I think they're a lot worse off since communism's fell. I'll give you a few simple reasons why. Number one, nationalism's rife now in Eastern Europe. You want to go look at former Yugoslavia, or bloodshed there since Yugoslavia split up. A lot of former Soviet states and that, they're in absolute turmoil. All these nuclear weapons that Soviet Union had, a lot of them's gone missing. A lot of them's being sold to Muslim fundamentalists. If that's peace on earth, mate, well, I'll leave you to decide.
John?
Well, I think you'd have to ask the people in Eastern Europe what they think. It's only what that bloke thinks, or whatever his name is.
Well, I don't know where you get your information from, John. Have you done a straw poll on people in Soviet Union?
I do meet a few.
Well, I mean, I watch satellite TV and that, I see, mass rallies of people, who prefer communism back in Russia. I'm not a communist, I've got to put that across. I'm just saying it how I see it.
But if they're a democratic state, Ian, then they can vote for communism again. What they can't vote for is to do away with democracy.
Do you reckon that it is truly democratic with a guy like Boris Yeltsin in power, though?
Defining what is and is not democratic, Ian, is an entirely different programme, and you'll never hear it here.
I'm not a politician, I'm just saying it how I see it, Tom.
Yeah.
I mean, can you disagree with some of them points that I've made?
Yes, and so can John, can't you?
Well, I just think Ronald Reagan probably did all that when he sort of built the American forces up, and the Russians tried to keep pace with him, and they went bankrupt. That's how he more or less destroyed communism.
But when the Soviet Union were one power, we had one common enemy, and I think they both cancelled each other out. Now we've just got, we've got Muslim fundamentalists in former Soviet Union, we've got nationalists in Russia and even former Eastern Germany. Czechoslovakia's got highest murder rate now, I think, since communism collapsed. You know what I mean?
Well, I think they probably still, prefer to be as they are now to what they were then.
Yeah, and let's not miss out on the goal scorers here, shall we, Ian? Because you rather glossed over the fact that Ronald Reagan, when he arrived in the White House, found himself looking down a gun barrel at the Kremlin. I mean, that wasn't his choice, but there was a Cold War, and it was thriving when Reagan arrived at the White House. When he left, it was over. Now, we can debate who benefited and who didn't benefit from that fact, but he won.
I'll agree with that, Tommy.
Ian?
Yeah, but at the end of the day, I come back to my point. I think it's better now than there was then. All right, regimes may have changed.
What do you do for a living, Ian?
Pardon?
What do you do for a living?
I just work in a supermarket, mate.
Okay, well, if I hire you to stack the shelves and you stack the shelves good, then you've done your job, regardless of whether or not people like the food. You've done your job. You've done what you were asked to do. That's 1 plus.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. We asked Ronald Reagan to win the Cold War, and he did.
But did he have any foresight? Surely, his analysts and that couldn't have seen knock-on effects of, about, all these things.
He does live in a democracy, and if he went on television and said, I don't think it will be such a good idea to win the Cold War, you know why? Because it'll mean a hike down in the living standards for people in Czechoslovakia. Now, do you honestly suppose that the American people would have queued up to vote for that?
Sorry, you're a lot more intelligent than me, mate. Can you repeat that again? Say that again, mate.
All I'm saying was he was hired to do a job, and he did it better than anybody could ever have dreamed.
Well, not in my opinion.
No, but if he'd gone to the American public and said, I don't think we should win the Cold War because it's going to cause unemployment in Czechoslovakia, I don't think that's a winning argument to put before the American electorate, so he'd have been out.
Yeah, but you might have pleased American electorate, but that doesn't necessarily mean anybody else on the planet's got to be his biggest fan, though, does it?
Oh, I don't think. I think the bulk of the planet's quite pleased that we haven't got to face a nuclear holocaust at the moment.
Well, I'm not so sure about that, mate. I mean, we've got China, North Korea. There's plenty of places with a nuclear, with nuclear capability. So, Soviet Union were just like...
We all know that. We all know that there's a possibility that that's the case. But it does not feel here, where are you, in South Yorkshire, it does not feel in South Yorkshire like it felt 15 years ago.
Well, I'm a lot more scared now than I was 15 years ago about what's going to happen on this planet.
Maybe, but there is less likely to be a nuclear holocaust now than there was then. And if it, all right, let's try to...
It depends what you mean by an holocaust.
No, it doesn't. It means being obliterated.
But there might be regionalisation.
Where are our missiles pointed? Who are we aiming them at?
God almighty, I couldn't tell you, Tommy, because I think we've got that many enemies these days since decentralisation.
Nobody. They're not aiming at anybody.
Well, I think that's a mistake, because I think we've got a lot more common enemies now than we had then.
Who would you aim them at?
Well, I'm not... I don't like aiming them at anybody, but I mean...
Well, you don't have to at the moment. But 15 years ago, you had to aim them at Russia. See, so the world's a slightly better place than it was. It doesn't hurt for that to be the case, you know. Nor does it hurt to say thanks to some geezer, even if his politics, broadly speaking, were at odds with your own. It doesn't hurt.
I'm not saying that communism was a great thing and that, but I think things were a lot more stabilised. That's my opinion anyway, you see. And my argument was that if Ronald Reagan's ended Cold War and he's ended communism in Eastern Europe, that he stabilised the planet. That's where I'm coming from. I disagree with that point, and I've tried to explain it as well as I can. Maybe.
Let's give Simon the last word on this one. Thank you for your call, Ian and John. Simon in Bath.
Hello.
Simon, hello.
Hi, Tommy.
Hi.
I think the man who will define the 20th century will be remembered for.
Yeah, I'm sorry, we've got a slight technical, Simon. It's a very controversial point you want to make, and I'm not sure whether the 20th century has conspired against you making it.
Oh, no.
But you're half and half nominating who as possibly the man of the century?
All right, deep breath. Adolf Hitler.
Okay.
I know. I'm not saying he was good, mind, because you didn't define the man of the century as good or evil. But I think he's, made a lasting impression.
There's a good argument here, Simon, and I am grateful that you suggest it, and we will devote an hour to Adolf Hitler. Perhaps next week. Thank you.
All right, Tom.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, cheers.
It's a thought, isn't it? Stand by for Peter Dealey and Britain's fastest moving drive.
Don't forget to subscribe and like. Comment too if you wish. Even slap your legs and make a purchase from Ann Summers. But don't do nothing.